Great. Good. Okay, just 1 second. What a crowd. What amazing audience. You need to help me. Thank you. Good. Great. That's it. So, can you see this pink screen? It's saying Cloud Security Lounge Mercedes Breach. Awesome. So this is okay, great. I'm loving this. This is my first live, and I'm so thankful to all of you that you're here. But going into what I'm gonna show today is basically I'm gonna introduce me, and I'm gonna show you 5, 6 slides and talk about a breach, and then tell you about some concepts. It's like a showcase of what I will have for you in the future. Great. So let's move on because it's very much like a one way discussion. I am speaking and I'm showing and I'm getting your feedback from the comments. It's a different feeling. Okay, so the next slide is a little bit of introduction about who I am, what do I do, and what I am here for. So my name is Amit, and I have like 20 years of experience in uh, working with different organizations throughout my career. You know, different banks, some tech companies, and now for last 3 4 years I'm working with AWS. And I feel like in this all 20 years, the things I explored and learned and you know progressed through, I am here to share that. I'm here to probably provide you that perspective, which uh, probably you can only see if you have lots of angles in your head to see those perspectives. I just happen to be working with different companies, and in that journey, I happen to saw those things, and I'm here to share. The way I reached to this place is all, there is no planning here. It's just organic journey, and I'm just going to share that organic experience, and probably it will help you connect some dots. That's my intent. Um, yeah, so that's my intent, and let's see what I have here for you today. So that was my intent, that was my personal motive, but how does this connect with the universe, the people who probably be interested in listening to me or getting insights which would be helpful for them? That is the how part, which is where I connect with you all in some manner, where I can say something and you can get it, and it can help you in, you know, uh, unlocking some kind of locks in your career, in your personal, professional life. That would be probably would be the high I would be looking for in this time I'm putting my focus on. So, how do I help? I bring a ton of experience and show you the perspective because I have seen those perspectives. Show you the ways of progression and building a path and road for your career. Sometimes, or most of the times, we all are just consumed in our lives, managing work, life, finances, this and that you forget that there is something you need to look for, and that thing is you yourself. Like, you need to be aware of what you are doing so that you can figure out where you can bring efficiencies and go to the next level. So in my career, that's what I did. I just learned something and applied it into another stream, and it was just organic flow. So I can bring you that experience which can show you How can you look at your job in a manner that will show you that there is an opportunity to progress? The second thing is, I probably will bring you the technical skills in security and AI, which would be cutting edge. And my focus would be to bring that thing in a most relatable manner. I am also learning the process of bringing that relatability into the complex concepts. And that is where why I think I can do that, because of my experience. Again, probably I can correlate something which is tough and complex for someone, and I can relate it with something which can help you understand that concept better. And probably I'll bring the perspective of how I learned that concept so that you can follow that path in your mind. And the third thing is, of course, it's the whole purpose of this exercise to build the community of people who are probably are aligned with the kind of mindset and tribe I have. I'm just looking for my tribe here, and for now, not for now, but for next 5, 6, 10 years, it's like a building process of building your own tribe, because I believe in the world will act in cohorts rather than being monopolized by big corporations. I think it's individuals and their cohorts, and because the expression and individuality in this space of artificial intelligence and tech evolution has gone to that space, that you don't have to be dependent on big organizations to chalk your career out. You can actually do that by building your own influence, building your own, reach. And I'm doing that. So in that process, maybe you can also acquire some clues. And while you are building your tech skills, you can also build your skills where you can reach. So, it's a journey. I'm on it, and you can just follow me, or, be with me, and we can go along. So that's the whole point why I am here. Now, let me take you to what we are going to do today. I'm going to show you a little bit of preview of how I learn things and how I implemented stuff, because I never actually objectively planned where I'm going and what I'm doing. It's all organic. Something comes, you be aware of it, you see how you can take it from there. So how I learned security, I just want to bring that perspective, and see if that can help you. And that perspective is basically, for me, if I need to learn some concepts in cloud security, I would always go by the objective. What is the objective? And in that case, when you talk about security, the objective is mostly, what are you safeguarding? What is under breach? What is vulnerable? So vulnerability is the perspective when it comes to security. So instead of looking at the concepts and then correlating it with real life situations, instead of that, do it backwards. Like, look at the breach first. So, for example, a breach happened some months back. I'm not sure if you are aware of that or not, but it happened in Mercedes Corporation, and basically their tokens were exposed in GitHub, and it was like their kingdom was exposed. Those tokens can be, now I'm not sure what those tokens are, but I'm going to take a clue here. So basically, I'm going to go over how the Mercedes breach happened, and then what can you do to prevent it as a cloud security engineer. And then third thing is, what are the guardrails available to prevent it? There is a prevention, and also there would be the response. So in these three things, breach, response, and guardrails, in these three things, I will explain you the concepts around AWS IAM. And once we reach to our last presentation or our last slide, you will correlate everything. So instead of me throwing you what is SCP and what is identity based policy, I would rather go first. I'm going to tell you of the breach. So you can hear this, and it can help you create conversations within your organizations, and also it can help you reach to a place where you can understand those concepts easily. If you are following me and I'm making any sense, maybe one comment would be amazing to have. Kali, Ravi, DevOps, if you guys are still here. All right. So comment whenever you hear this. So good, good. Okay. So now I'm showing you a screen which shows a picture of the car. Good. Awesome. This is great. So I'm showing you a picture of the car with a breach which says Mercedes source code exposed by leaked GitHub token. So basically, what happened 2 months back? A employee of Mercedes, uh, by accident, he checked in some tokens or API keys. Like in today's world, everything is an API key. Because everything is a software as a service. So your AWS accounts also expose API keys through which you connect and do the customizations or whatever you need to do. So you connect with AWS programmatically via API keys, and if those API keys are somehow checked into the repo because this developer was probably writing an app which will connect with AWS and do something. Maybe it's a Lambda function or something else. So he basically wrote that application, and he accidentally, instead of injecting or taking those keys from secrets manager or some kind of vault, he basically just checked that thing hard coded into the code. So once you check in your keys into the code, and it's a public repo, those keys are now vulnerable and can easily be stolen by the processes which are scanning those keys consistently on these repos. So basically, those keys were stolen. And then what happened is, if you are aware of how AWS APIs work, it's very easy to know about information about the keys, because once you get the keys, you can use AWS SDK to connect with AWS accounts for which these keys are, and then get the information about the key. And you can also get to know what kind of privileges these keys are having. So if by an accident these keys are having excessive privileges, imagine there is an admin access attached to this key. Now you get the key, and now you know that it is an admin key. But as a hacker, you will never do things which will expose your tracks. You will get into the account, you will stay there for some time, you will go through the cloud trails, you will understand what is happening in this account, you will know about it, what are the EC2s, what are the security groups. You will get to know things, but you will not leave an audit trail because you will be caught. After some days, by that time, you would have claimed your persistence in that account. Now you will start uh, abusing it. So, what will the hacker do? it will first create a backdoor. Backdoor is like if he is locked out, how can he, um, you know, get out of it? And then he will start creating duplicate accounts, which will also have the admin privileges. And before creating those accounts, he will disable CloudTrail or any log mechanism which will log these new account creations or new access keys creation, so that these new keys will never be detected and this guy will keep using it for his purposes. So he will create these new keys, and then he will start abusing the resources. Like, for example, with these new keys, he will create new EC2 instances. And on those EC2 instances, he will run malwares. He will run ransomwares. He might run Bitcoin mining. This will not be known. And the intention of the hacker would be to not get this known, obviously, because if that happens, his access will be terminated. So he will run into your system as long as possible and abuse it before it will either ask for the extortion or fulfill his purpose. But that's a long story short. Basically, what I am trying to reach to is that once your access key is stolen and it is in the GitHub, it's very hard to know how much damage is already done. And to ascertain the damage and figure out what you can do with it, you need to understand what actually happened and how how hacker actually able to do it. So let's first look at the response part. So you, as a cloud engineer or cloud security engineer, got to know that a key was exposed, it was abused. What will you do now? You will try to reduce the attack surface area by deleting or finding all the keys which were created with this stolen key. Because now you know that the key was stolen, I get to know that incident happened. Now you will backtrace it. You will go into your audit logs, in your CloudTrail logs, and you will figure out what kind of API calls were made with these stolen keys, and you will make a kind of a report for your management outlining the impacts it caused in your environment. And once you figure out the impact, then obviously first you disable the user credentials, of course. So you basically, whatever the new keys were created, you delete them, block them. And then once all the child keys are blocked and disabled, you will disable the main key. And then you will basically update the applications who were using this old key to use the new key, which is probably not vulnerable. So that's what you do to mitigate the responses. Now, that was the breach and the response in summary. But what can you do to prevent it? Now it happened, and you contained it. But what went wrong? There are many things which went wrong in this whole scenario. Yeah, that would be for insurance company would be called for sure, and legal and forensics too. Um, in that incident response mechanism, all these contacts which you are mentioning, they will be invoked or called for. Yes, that's true. Okay, so but with all that, what you can do is basically take advantage of this breach and learn about it and use it as a case study in your interviews. Learn everything about Mercedes breach, and I'm sure you will crack at least one interview if you just learn this attack and replicate it in your accounts, and you put all the guardrails which I'm talking about in the next 1 week or 2 weeks, you will be able to pass 100% couple of interviews, because it will give you all the ammunition which you need around IAM data protection, and other concepts around incident response and detecting a breach. And this breach is relatable. It's not like, somebody abused the memory spaces of Linux and it's very hard to debug them because you don't know how the debugger works. Here, the technology moved such an advanced stage that now you don't need to go to that level. Abstractions are uh, so advanced these days that things are very simple if you put awareness on it. So, what you can do as an employee, use it as a case study, and you know make make a case for yourself, just like I make this presentation. It looks good. It's like pink and red. I think I just took this image and it's just glued into the PowerPoint very nicely. I made it on Canva. Okay, so how could this be avoided? So before the avoidance comes into the picture, like, first understand how it happened. It happened because an employee was able to check in the key into the code, which means their CI/CD pipeline. Um, Kali, the attack is not limited to one user by now. I just don't understand this. I need to put some attention on understanding this. My mind is consumed in something else. So, first, if your key is left in code, it means your CI/CD pipeline and people who are putting um, the tools on it is definitely not up to mark. But that's where you will not stop. Obviously, there are plethora of tools which you can connect with your CI/CD pipelines, and these days there are a lot of software as a services came into um, the market, which can just give you one click, installation of security of CI/CD pipeline. Actually, I'm going to talk to one person who has created a product which is doing the same thing in coming days, and it will be a primer for vulnerability management and probably CI/CD pipeline um, security. But yeah, CI/CD pipeline was definitely not secure at that time. But imagine, even if it was secure and still supply chain attacks happen, somebody is able to take the credentials, because credentials are credentials. They cannot be safe, however security you put on them. So imagine they are going to be stolen. What will you do now? Like, you need to always be thinking about the how can you protect your AWS accounts by putting guardrails on it. um, when I say guardrails, you know, uh, you start with very generic guardrails, like, no user in an AWS account can create an admin access privilege user in it. Like, if there is an SCP, something like that, the attacker won't be able to create admin accounts without going through consequences. So the guardrails in access management space is basically something which needs to be worked upon. But you cannot just understand guardrails. in one go. You need to go to the root of now accounts, organizations, or use how principles, resources, how identity based, how resource based, how permission boundaries, how session permissions work together. It sounds very exhausting. It is really sounding exhausting to me too. But once you go through it, once you put attention and you clarify these concepts, then whole AWS becomes easy. Because once you understand IAM, you understand everything. Because IAM is one of the service which just is used by almost every service in AWS. You implement any service, you need to know IAM. You will never be secure if you don't know IAM properly. So, putting time on understanding what these things are and how they can be audited continuously is probably key to your kingdom. Just like that key which was stolen and found in somebody's GitHub was the key to kingdom to the accounts of that enterprise. Similarly, you can use the guardrails to unlock your own awareness. So let's talk a little bit about what are these concepts. So this is one diagram which I'm showing you. It's a very primal diagram. If you see there on the right hand side, there are two AWS accounts, and they have different account IDs. In that account, there is a user and then there is a request. On left hand side, again, you have an account. It's an AWS account. And in that account, there are some resources on the bottom. And the resources are EC2 service, IAM service, and one other service. So basically, if you need to understand the AWS, whole AWS like game or components, think like this. There are resources which are the things which AWS sells basically. So AWS sell EC2 resources, EC2 services, EC2 instances. And what do they sell? They sell some actions which you can perform on that service. Everything is digital. You will only get permissions to use that service through some APIs, and for that you will pay. So you will have resources, you will have actions on top of them, and then you will have a service which will control these actions to these resources. And who will perform these actions are basically the users. Those users are the engineers like you and me. Those users can be administrators. Those users can be business users. Those users can be consumers. Those users can be APIs. Those users can be computers. So basically, when we talk about IAM, it's all about who is accessing what resource and whether that guy can actually access that resource in that manner or not. That's the whole IAM. So in this whole circle, basically you have policies. When I say policies, what is a policy? It's like if I tell you as a citizen, you can access park number 1 or 2 on Saturday evening and Sunday evening, and rest of the times you cannot access that park because that park is reserved for some VIP function. That is a policy. So there is a park, which is a resource. There is a policy who can use it. What kind of person can use that park? A athlete who is in his teenage can use this park from Saturday afternoon till Sunday evening. And a super citizen can use this park rest of the days every day. So that's the policy. So these policies are created for authorization purposes. You authorize a person to use a resource based on his role. What is his role? So role is another important factor, and there are multiple kinds of roles. Even in this picture, if you see, there is a role and there is a federated user, and then there is a user, and then there is an application. So basically, a user is called a user, or the role, both, is called principal in AWS language. If you go to GCP, this language will totally be changed. GCP does not do this hierarchical policy evolution. Their evaluation is different. So principles in are only applicable in context of AWS. And then those principles are the ones who will be accessing the resources. So when I say a person stole the key, and then that person used the key to log into AWS accounts, the principal here is the owner of that key. That person is the principal here. And this principal will have access to resources in AWS account based on what policy is attached to that principal. And remember when I said that hacker took over the control, he had the admin policies attached to him. So principal will have a policy attached to him which will say what this principal can do in this account. And that policy is called identity-based policy. So you assign the policy, and that will restrict the access of that user onto the resources. Then you have resource-based policies. The resource-based policies are attached with the resources. Again, in GCP, there is no identity-based policy at all. Everything is just resource-based policy. So this is the difference between GCP and AWS IAM. In AWS, the policies applies on both resources as well as on principals and multiple other places. Because I feel like it was an incremental development, and as AWS evolved, the IAM evolved, and the patches were applied on top of one another. But in case of GCP, probably their evolution happened a little fast, and probably they have a better plan. I don't know if it is a better or not, but they have a different kind of evolution for the policies. AWS IAM is hard. It is complicated, but it opens up a lot of avenues. And without AWS IAM, you won't be able to do anything actually. If you are an engineer working anywhere in any enterprise, and you are doing something in AWS, it's probably more object oriented. Hopefully, it is objective. It is more customer oriented. Probably inspired by real world. What about Google? They are like dreamers who are not live in real world, but they create their own world. It is possible. So you will have identity-based policies and resource-based policies. On resource-based policies, you can tell who can access this resource, right? Like I will put a policy on EC2 and say, this EC2 can only be accessed by principals in organizations ABC. That's it, and it will only can be accessed by this VPC CIDR range. So you can do that. But these two policies probably will get you started. But if you are looking to progress and do something skillful in your career, you probably will definitely be needing the information about SCPs, because SCPs are like generic guardrails which go on organizations. And once you talk about SCPs, you get into organizations, and now you get into security maturity model and segregations of accounts, and you're bringing regulation and compliance. You're moving up the ladder. Like if you are in a organization which is startup or very mid level, you will not probably see all these things. But as you move up along, you will have to know. Then my money lock has different policy that only my wife can access. No, that is not a policy. That is a bluff which you are playing. Because I know you can only access the money yourself. Your wife cannot. It's just a policy. It's like an SCP, but it's a fake one. Yeah. It's for the regulation and compliance. It's not for the real thing. Okay, so identity based and resource based. Then you will have then you have permission boundaries and session based policies. The permission boundaries are which you can apply. So basically, what happens is when a user logs into AWS account, these policies will be evaluated one by one. You know, first it will be checked whether the SCP is allowing you, then identity-based policy, then resource-based policy, then you go to permission boundaries, and finally you check for the session policies. So, but I don't think I will be going that deep into all of them today. I think I already said so many things, and you tell me if these things make sense and you get things out of it, or I need to do something different, make it a little more simple, create more modularity, create something different. But for today, I think this is what I have.